Now that Tampa Bay is a solid NHL franchise, winning numerous cups over the last number of years, it's hard to believe 30 years ago there was a fight between potential owners as to what the team was really worth. One tried to low ball and one tried to high ball, and guess which one won? Now, the Tampa Bay Lightning, I consider it one of the most important teams in the modern era. In the late 1980s, the NHL announced it would expand. Two rival groups from the Tampa Bay area decided to bid for a franchise. A St. Petersburg-based group, fronted by future Hartford Whalers, Carolina Hurricanes owners Peter Kamarnis and Jim Rutherford, and a Tampa Bay-based group fronted by the great Phil Esposito and his brother Tony, who are both members of the Hockey Hall of Fame. One of the Esposito's group key backers, the Pritzker family, backed out a few months before the bid to be replaced by a consortium of Japanese businessmen headed by Kokushai Green, a golf course and resort operator. On paper, it looked like the Karmanis Rutherford group was better financed, but only wanted to pay $25 million before starting play. In contrast, the Esposito Kokushai Green Group was one of the few associations willing to pay the full $50 million expansion fee up front. Now, they eventually got the franchise, and the Esposito Group would win it on December 6, 1990, and named the team the Lightning, after Tampa Bay's status of the Lightning capital of North America. Now, Esposito, not in a shock, assigned himself a president GM, while Tony became chief scout. Now, Terry Crisp, the coach of the 89 Cup winners Calgary, and who played for Flyers when he won 2 cups, was tapped as the first head coach. Esposito also hired former teammates for the Boston Bruins of the 1870s, including close friend Wayne Cashman as an AC and former Bruin trainer John Frosty Forstall as the team's trainer. The inaugural team photo has been flanked by Cashman player Kennard Jr., son of his other Bruins line mate. Now, in 1991, Angus Montague, 12th Duke of Manchester, announced that a company of which he was a director would raise millions of dollars investments in the Lightning, but his plans were unsuccessful, and he was later convicted of, get this, wire fraud. Now, the Lightning played their first preseason game in September 92 against the Minnesota North Stars, and he turned heads later that preseason when Manon Rhéaume became the first woman to play an NHL game, which also made her the first woman to play in any of the major professional North American sports leagues, and she won into great success for Team Canada. She played for the Lightning against the St. Louis Blues, giving up only 2 goals and 9 shots. Now, they played their first regular season game on October 7, 92 in Tampa's tiny 11,000 Expo Hall at the Florida State Fairgrounds. They surprised the visiting Blackhawks, winning 7-3 with 4 goals by the hard-working but little-known Chris Kontos. The team rose to the top of the Campbell Compass Northern Division within a month, behind Kontos' initial torrid pace and a breakout season by forward Brian Bradley. However, it buckled under the strain of some of the longest road trips in the NHL. Their nearest division rival, the Blues, were over 1,600 kilometers away, and he'd eventually finished in last place with a record of 23, 54, and 7. This was, at the time, one of the best ever showings by NHL's expansion team. Now, Bradley's 42 goals gave Tampa Bay fans optimism for the next season, and would be a team record until 2007. Now, going over that first season, again, they've ended up 6 in the North, 11 overall in the Campbell, just as good as home in the road, 12-27-3, 11-27-4 in the road, 244 of 5 goals for, 332 against. Now that year, of course, it was alternate captains that year were Brian Bradley, John Ducker, and former Montreal Canadian Calgary Flame Rob Radmans, but there was no captain that year. The minor league affiliates were the Atlanta Knights and Louisville IceHawks. Louisville played the ECHL. That year, Bradley went 42, 44, 86. Mike Harpin had 154 penalty minutes. Peter Taglianetti, very under player, was +8. Jean-Claude Bergeron and Pat Jablonski both had 8 wins. Goals against average winner were Bergeron and Wendell Young at 3.66. Now, the Tampa Bay draft was quite interesting. They took Wendell Young as their number 1 pick from Pittsburgh, and the second was Frederick Chabot, the Montreal Canadiens prospect. So other players taken in a draft that year included Joe Rickey, Sean Chambers, Peter Taglianetti, the great Bob McGill, Jeff Blomberg, Doug Crossman, Rob Ramage, Michael Mongeau, Antonio Semenov, Mike Hartman, Basil McRae, for toughness, of course, Rob DeMaio, Steve Malte, Dan Vincelent, Timmy Berglund, Brian Bradley, Keith Osborne, Shane Stevenson, and Tim Hunter. Now, draft picks that year, the number one draft pick, of course, was a big drink of water. Roman Hamrlik, number one. And Bannister was taken second, 26 overall. Wayne Gretzky's brother, Brent, was taken from Belleville, 49th overall, 10th round. And from there, it was, not too bad. You had Corey Cross as well, as a supplemental pick. Now, unfortunately, the worst part of Lightning's game that year was their last in the penalty kill during the regular season at 74.43%. Now, Pat Jablonski also had the first shutout in team history as he blanked their fellow expansion cousins, the Ottawa Senators, 1-0 at home. Now, although he fell well out of contention, the 53 points they had was actually more than the combined totals for that season of the Senators and the Sharks, who were then in their second season. Both only recorded 24 points each. Now, again, tough division. Chicago, first place. Detroit and Toronto. St. Louis and Minnesota. Tough division. All teams above were over 500 except for Minnesota. Now, they won their opening game against Chicago 7-3, and actually were playing 500 for most of October until the doldrums unfortunately came in. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go over some of the stats that year to make sure the Tampa Bay fans are covered, because there was a lot of interesting prospects and future great players. Brian Bradley again was the top scorer. So we have to talk a little bit about transactions here. We will in a second. So again, the regular season, Bradley was number one. John Tucker, very underrated, 56 points, 17 goals. Contos, 27 goals, 66 games. Robbie Zamner, 15 goals in 84 games. Adam Creighton, always underrated, 39 points in 83 games. Sean Chambers, 39 points in 55 games. Bob Beers, 36 points in 64 contests. Mark Bureau, 31 points in 63 games. Dougie Crossman, 29 points in 40 games. Mikael Anderson had 16 goals in 77 games. Danton Cole had 27 points in 67 games. Rob DeMaio had 24 points in 54 games. In his rookie campaign, Hamrlik had 21 points in 67 games. Malte had 20 points. Rob Ramage had 17. Marc Bergevin had 14. Joe Ricci had 13. Ken Hodge Jr. had 9 points. Peter Taglianetti had 9 points. Mike Hartman had 8. Steve Casper had 8. Timmy Berglund had 6. Jason Lafreniere had 6. Basil McRae putting up 71 minutes and penalties in only 14 games. Semenoff had 5 points in 13 games. Chris LaPuma, 5 assists in 15 games. Matt Hervey, 4 assists. Stan Druella, 2 goals in 24 games. Jock Calder, 2 points in 8 games. Dave Copuano, 2 points in 6 games. Michel Mongeau, 2 points in 4 games. Keith Osborne, 2 points in 11 games. Randy Gillen, 2 assists in 11 games. Sean Rivers, 2 assists in 4 games. Shane Stevenson, 1 assist in 8 games. The great Alain Côté, last drink of water, 2 games. Herb Ragland, 2 games. And Stéphane Richer played 3 games. Jason Ruff, 1 game, and Martin Samard. So in between the net, Jean-Claude Bergeron, 8-10-1 in 21 games. Patrick Jablonski, 8-24-4. Wendell Young, always consistent, 7-19-2. And David Littman went 0-1. Now, transactions, of course. Shabbat was sent back to Montreal for Jean-Claude Bergeron. Then Danton Cole was picked up from Winnipeg. Future consideration, Martin Savard. And, of course, the big trade with St. Louis, where we got Jablonski, Kimball, Robinson, and Steve Tuttle for a 4th in 94, 5th in 95, and a 6th in 96. Now, Matt Irving, Ken Hodge Jr. for Darren Kimball in September 92. The Jeff Blomberg trade to Lefkoe to Edmonton. October 28th to Boston, not the Stéphane Richer, but the other one. And Bob Beers came back. Dave Copuano for Antonio Semenoff. Steve Casper was picked up for Dan Vincelette. And then the big trade, of course, to St. Louis, Basil McRae, Doug Crossman, and a 4th rounder for Jason Ruff, a 4th rounder, 5th rounder, and a 6th rounder in 94, 95, and 96, respectively. So to Quebec, he picked up Herb Ragland for Mongeau, Savard, and Tuttle. And then they traded Ramage to Montreal, who was part of the Cup Tour, for Eric Charot, Alain Côté, and Donald Dufresne after the NHL playoffs were done. So March 93, they traded Peter Taglianetti and Mike Harpin to Pittsburgh and New York, respectively. Now, the free agents again, Scott Boston, Chris LaPuma, Sean Rivers, Mikhail Anderson, Marc Bergevin, Jean Blouin, Christian Campo, Jeff McKinnon, Robbie Zamner, Chris Contos, Jacques Calder, Jason Lafreniere, Mike Greenley, Stéphane Richer, John Tucker, Bob McGill, big pickup from Toronto, Adam Creighton, Mark Bureau, who was with Minnesota at the time. And again, there was a big francophone overlay with the team with a little bit of European skills. So ladies and gentlemen, when you watch Tampa Bay of 2022, you're saying to yourself, they've come a long way because the Espositos wanted to be competitive that first year, and that's what they did. But they didn't have really much to work with. It was pretty dry for draft picks after the early 90 and 91 years where Sundin and Lindros and everything was coming in. So they did quite well. And when a few years when Vincent showed up, they were Stanley Cup contenders. So ladies and gentlemen, it's our latest NHL Vintage podcast. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget, keep your stick on the ice. Bye.